Hello, hello, hello. Good evening and welcome, not for the second time, only the first time, I promise, to Gameweek 23's Scoutcast during Gameweek 22, however. And to avoid any more mishaps, I will hand over to the author of all the mishaps so far, though, to be fair, Andy. Andy, how you doing, mate? You good?
Oh, I was hoping you were going to be really nice to me then. Yes,
Oh,
obviously we are
80%
here.
nice.
We're going to be talking about Game Week 23. We are in the midst of Game Week 22 at the moment with Manchester United versus Leeds. It's going to be on Wednesday. Obviously, that has a bit of a different feel at the moment with the news that Jesse Marsh has been sacked by Leeds, but I'm sure we will talk about that a little bit later. On that note, though, Seb, how's it going? How's your Game Week going so far?
Good, thank you, man. Good, very, very good. Game week, the average little green arrow, which is nice. But yeah, I'm in a really good mood. It feels weird to repeat the thing I said a second ago because it was so boring. But I had a really good day because I had a good day at work. It was productive. It was spreadsheets. I'm the only one that cares. But hey, we're live and it's cool. How are you?
Good, man. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. What about you, Rich? How's your week been? Obviously, we're joined by you again tonight.
Yeah, the week FPL wise has not been great, but I mean I think that's to do with my goalkeeper choices. And
Oh.
last week I spent the half the show talking about goalkeeper choices, and I'm sat here with a 1 pointer. So yeah,
Yeah, I know. It's been an interesting week, hasn't it? I mean, you look at my team. I've got Bruno, Rashford, and Shaw that all did well, and Kepa. Apart from that, it's just all ones and twos. Like the rest of my team has really struggled, and I think there's a lot of other people out there. By the way, I do apologise now. My throat is not amazing. But I've done one of my parents' evenings and my voice is going already. So I do apologise if it goes at any point. If it does, we'll just let Seb do the rest of the talking for me. Right, should we go on to our... No, don't go on to our teams. Let's talk about what we're actually going to talk about tonight. We're going to look at our teams. We're going to look at how our points are looking so far. Obviously, you can see our ranks on the screen. Then we're going to be talking about the doubles and the blanks that are upcoming. So we've got Mikel's matrix that we're going to look at. And Seb has done a really good job of trying to quantify who we think the best teams are based on their upcoming fixtures and their ease of fixtures as well, which is quite interesting. Then from that, we're looking at the non-obvious teams you can target and then the obvious teams you can target. So the obvious teams are obviously, obvious teams are obviously Arsenal, City, and there's also Liverpool in there, which would be quite interesting, but we'll talk about that in a bit. And then we're going to look at our teams and how our best teams are looking because we've got some interesting decisions moving forward. Me in particular, I'm a little bit stuck as to what to do. We're going to mention somebody that is leaving out in some capacity towards the end. We're also going to do a little bit of a shout out for Game Week 39, which I think Rich is going to be in charge of. And then we're going to have some community questions. So, Seb, if you could do the honours, please, could you bring up my team?
There we go, friend. If you're watching on YouTube, you're going to be a second behind, aren't you? But it is up, I promise.
It's fine. It's fine. I know how to do it on my app as well. So I did play my triple captain this week. I played it on Rashford, who's obviously did very well in the first fixture, got a goal and an assist. And if I'm being honest, I think if Casemiro wasn't sent off, I think he might have even got another attack in return. But I'll take it for now. It's fine. So I had Kepa in goal with 10 points. Trippier, White both got 2. Shaw with 5, but he's got another fixture. Rashford triple captain on 36 at the moment with Leeds to go. Martinelli with 1. We're going to talk about him in a little bit. Fernandes with 10, obviously got the penalty. De Bruyne with 1, Tony with 1, Haaland with 2, and Mitrovic with 2. Not a lot to write home about apart from the United lads and Kepa. 72 points so far and about a 30k green arrow. It was looking like a very healthy green arrow until Kane scored and until none of my other players did anything. So it's been an interesting week so far, but obviously triple captain Rashford, I can't scoff at the moment. Seb, shall we have a look at your team?
We shall. Oh, that looks interesting. Good. I'm guessing you can see that doing weird stuff. Hey, at least when I'm hosting, I can do this. I can be like, there you go, sit in a proper place on the page. Thanks very much. Cool. Yeah, we had some hosting shenanigans tonight, so no one will care. I think we're doing a good job, but to you guys, it'll look like we're just doing usual. So, what's changed? I have Kepa in goal with 10 points, Gabriel, Shaw, Trippier, Salah, Fernandes, vice-captain, Rashford, captain, not triple captain, Martinelli, Darwin, of course, Haaland and Gnonto. So I still have the traditional Man United trio to go like most do. And then Gnonto as well, although I would have expected anything to come against Forest rather than United. I thought he probably looked our best player against Forest, I think, especially in that first half where we were decent. But yeah, the second half was poor. We now have a different manager too. So, all that chat we did about lineups and tactics. So, man, how does it? Got a new manager. No. So, we'll have a new manager. So, yeah, that barely matters. But I think I've gone from, where was I, like 420, 440 to 370 odd. Probably creep up a little bit further like yourself, Andy. You'll probably break top 100k, I'd imagine. Just with having, Fernandes and Rashford and Shaw play again. It's kind of hard, I'd imagine, to drop from here, especially at my rank as well. Triple captain, Rashford doesn't, I guess it hurts me, but a captain still sees me earn points at my rank, so that's nice. So yeah, decent. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a shame with Nonto because he had 2 chances that Sinistera and Bamford both kind of missed, didn't they? And I feel like Nonto, you maybe should have got an attack in return, so that was a bit of a tough one.
Had a decent one himself as well, sort of shot it near, probably a bit too central near post. Keylor Navas was great, to be fair. Take nothing away from that.
Not a bad one to bring in, is he, Keylor Navas? And then on to the only red arrow so far. Rich, what's going on?
Yeah, I spent all that time trying to slowly catch Seb, and now, red arrow. And we've got the same players left. So, yeah, I knew I wasn't going to catch Seb. But yeah, my transfer this week was all right. I removed Salah. I was really reluctant to do it as well, but I had 2 transfers. I've done Salah to Bruno. So that was an instant gain. Got a 4 million in the bank that I don't know what to do with. So I'm feeling like how you did, Andy, the last few weeks. But yeah, it was pretty, I wouldn't say, no, it was disastrous. I mean, I've got 3 Man City players. They combined. Edison got 1, Mahrez got 1, Haaland got 2. My 3 Arsenal that have been so reliable, Gabriel 2, Martinelli 1, and Saka 2. And then the only players, and then obviously the triple Man United that everyone seems to have anyway. So did it really gain that much? Probably not. And Dunk got 6, Trippier got 2. So 3 triple ups in my team. I'm glad I benched Mitrovic. Leno keeps outscoring Edison over recent weeks.
God, yeah, it's a real tough one in your team. You think that triple Arsenal and triple City, especially having them already before the double game week in 23, all you needed them to do was perform a little bit this week and you'd have been so happy, wouldn't you? But for both teams to have lost 1-0, that's tough going, isn't it?
I know, but it was a weird game week, wasn't it? I mean, obviously Man United did well, but everyone seems to have them. Then you got Man City didn't score, Arsenal didn't score, Liverpool didn't score. None of them kept clean sheets. There was I mean, even Newcastle conceded after being so reliable. And obviously Matoma scored again. None of us have Kane. So I'm sure we'll talk about him again later.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one to talk about tonight because I know we've all mentioned about Matoma quite a few times. And obviously we mentioned about the blank. None of us have Kane, which is actually quite surprising that 3 people on here, none of us have Kane. And we're going to be talking about Arsenal and Man City in depth a little bit later as well when we talk about our obvious teams to target, because it may be obvious teams to target, but which players to target does seem a little less obvious. So we're going to be coming on to that next. So doubles and blanks and Seb, we've got Mikel's table to bring up. And this is an up-to-date one because I know, Rich, you put this in our group chat. I think it was yesterday, said it's up to date. Let's get it on.
Yeah, he updated it. So yeah, Mikel Top Fan, we mentioned him before. He does his transfer algorithm. And basically what he's done is he just puts it in an easy-to-use format. I know Ben Crellin's brilliant. But there's all these permutations. He puts it in like a percentage, I think based on what Ben says. And it looks quite simple, but we also have very, very little confirmed. We obviously know we've got this double. We've been talking about this for weeks now with Arsenal and City this week. Yeah. It looks like it's very unlikely there's going to be a double in 24. The next potential double is Liverpool have a 1.48 chance. So I think that's a 48% chance of having a double game week in 25, and he's got Wolves at 40% chance. Because I think one of the main fixtures that could move there is Liverpool against Wolves. So I think in the short term, that's the main one we need to be thinking of. Brighton, and that's the game week as well, isn't it? That's the game week where we've talked about a lot with Brighton and Newcastle blanking. But then Brighton could have that blank, and then potentially 44% chance that they double in game week 26. So, but none of this is confirmed. And I think we might know a bit more after the Cup replays on Wednesday. I think it's Fulham against Sunderland. I think a lot of the fixture experts like James and Ben, they seem to think if we hear anything, it will be about 48 hours after that, which would be just ahead of the next double game week deadline, game week 23.
I know, Seb, we were looking at this last night and saying that
in bed.
difference between game week 28, which is the massive blank game week, and then game week 29 being such a massive double game week. That seems like it could be a really good time to wildcard, doesn't it?
I'd be tempted to say maybe free hit, like dead end 28, free hit 29. And then looking at this, maybe wildcard a bit closer to 34 or 32 because you've got the blank, wildcard to survive the blank or what have you, into then 34 with a bench boost, what have you. There'll be a few permutations, which is something as well we'll talk about as we get closer, because I think we can do it to death, 5 weeks out or whatever. But the important thing, as Rich covered there as well, the important thing to note is obviously at the moment in here, there's every permutation, every chance of a double and a blank. So someone who might be carrying just one extra fixture, you might see they have a chance of doubling in several different weeks. That's obviously because that one fixture could go into several different weeks. So I think with a lot of this has been the case for a while now, hasn't it? That we want to maybe just wait as long as we possibly can, get a bit more information. Like Rich said, the midweek game should help us. By the time we get there, we will have a much clearer picture, hopefully. But for me, I think it's probably going to be a free hit, then a wild card. But there's valid strategies in other directions too, especially depending on your team now.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, Rich, we're looking at those players that are going to blank in game week 25, and we know for certain that Newcastle, Brighton, Brentford and Man United are blanking. We've spoken in detail about the fact we haven't got Matoma because of that blank. But you look at it and it's really tough because a lot of these players, they're players that people have in their teams, aren't they? So we've got triple United at the moment. I've got Tony. People have Matoma. People have Estupiñán and Dunk. I know you've got Dunk. A lot of us have at least 2 Newcastle. It's actually quite a tough blank to work your way around, isn't it?
Yeah. And then if Brighton double in 26, like we said, the 44% chance it's been given, that makes it even more tricky. For I think with Matoma, people are going to be tempted, and rightfully so, to just hold Matoma through the blank. I think that makes sense. But even for players like you mentioned, I've got Dunk. That's going to be tricky because obviously I want to maximise my players in 25. But also if Brighton double in 26, I want to be able to maximise doublers as well. So it is going to be interesting. And it's why I've been quite boring recently and trying to keep 2 free transfers, where possible. And try and not commit to anything, because I even feel like we talked about Liverpool potentially having having a potential double in 25. But we know if that happens, people are going to want to go back to Salah or Darwin because they're going to want to captain. So no matter how down on Salah and Darwin people are, I guarantee it. Do you remember Salah scored against City, didn't he? When no one wanted him, and then everyone was getting him in to captain him, and this would be for a double game week. So I think having a plan in the back of your mind how you will get to at least one of them, I think it's key. Even if you're just looking to get to Alisson,
You should just try having both still in your team, mate.
Yeah, I know.
I've been planning for this and costing myself rank and respect the whole way.
I love that though. Like, I love the idea of you keeping hold of them and thinking, they'll come good eventually. Then it's 25.
I'm in too deep, man. I'm in too deep.
There you go.
Yeah. I told you guys. Look at all the points I've gained. Just like Seb, you've doubled your rank.
Now, Seb, we gave you. Well, actually, we didn't give you. You took it upon yourself, which is lovely. the challenge of quantifying this kind of fixture list and putting it into this is the amount of fixtures they could have in the next 6 game weeks, I think it was. And this is the ease of fixtures, and kind of try to rank the teams in terms of how we should be targeting these teams and which players we should be targeting, haven't you? And there's a interesting team that's come out on top.
Yeah, so you can just tell I did it because it's Liverpool, but we'll get into that. So there's, again, heavily based on the last one. Thank you, as ever, to Mikel, Ben, for doing their work, because we steal that and put it into this. But this is from game week 23 to 28, just using Mikel's probabilities of doubles and blanks there, as you can see. And then obviously the totals totted up. But this is ordered by then a very, very rudimentary metric, I guess I put in here, which is difficulty per fixture. So it's not just about who has the most fixtures. It's about, well, how easy are those? If you have 3 fixtures compared to everyone else's 1, but it's 2 City and Arsenal, it's not nearly as attractive as obviously maybe a couple of good fixtures. This kind of really comes from the whole Matoma conversation, right? Because if you could go back to Christmas now and tell our past selves to pick Matoma, we'd probably tell you to do one, but it would be the right choice, I guess. And I think we covered this last week as well. Every week You could get Matoma, but I myself personally have had, more pressing issues, and Matoma, I wasn't just avoiding him because of the blank, but obviously that plays into it. And it was just every week I thought I could set my team better up in another way. So I thought with more doubles and blanks coming, it's like, can we maybe try and avoid that this time? Can we see if there are any teams who, even if they blank or don't have as many doubles, they have good enough fixtures, and then we'll look at players in a minute as well to find good players, that we shouldn't ignore them this time around and not repeat our mistakes. Now, like I said, this is extremely rudimentary, though. I wanted to do it with expected goal difference, but I didn't have time, I'm afraid. So if anyone wants to go and do that, please do. You'll come up with a better answer. This was literally just using the fixture difficulty rating on the FPL website. And then the percentage chance of any single match taking place in a certain week. So it's not always like round numbers that went into it. I used the percentage chance in there as well. But we come up with this difficulty per fixture, and obviously a lower number is good there. There's a team we would expect to see there is Arsenal. They've got, a few more fixtures than other teams, and generally they have decent enough fixtures. So they come out top of our list here with a low score, which is a good thing, sort of an average fixture difficulty. But we then have the other player that you wanted to talk about tonight, Andy, which is Harry Kane. Tottenham are second there. So if you wanted to follow this model, so not really a model, but if you wanted to follow this spreadsheet, you could get Harry Kane. Even though, looking at this, it looks like they do blank in 28. They don't have any doubles. The strength of the fixtures seem enough to say Harry Kane will be fine anyway. However, if you want to follow that logic, you also have to get Liverpool. So I kind of win anyway.
I think most people do have Harry Kane, just to break it to all three of us. But yeah.
I guess he's a similar thing to Matoma, isn't he, right? He's been ignored. Should he have been ignored? And I guess this is an interesting way of looking.
I think this is a different type of ignored, though, isn't it? It's like Matoma's been not ignored, but people thought... Kane's very different, isn't he? Like Matoma, it was he might not carry on doing it anyway. He's got the fixtures, but obviously he blanks in 25. Kane doesn't blank until 28, and he doesn't have any double game weeks coming up. Like it's all going to be single game weeks there. But Rich, we've mentioned Kane already there. It seems to me, and Praz mentioned this on our members only stream when I did it with him last week, the closer you get to 28, the less likely you probably are to bring him in. But with 5 nice fixtures coming up, getting him in earlier probably seems like a better idea, doesn't it?
It will be, yeah, I agree with Praz there, because it will become a similar thing to the blanks we've got in 25, especially if people need to do quite a lot of surgery to do it. I think this week's a tricky week because, players like Mitrovic, they've got I think Fulham have got Forest at home, haven't they? Which is a brilliant fixture. So I'd probably almost prefer Mitrovic, the same level for this game week as Kane, for example, even though we don't know about the penalty situation with Mitrovic.
Yeah.
So, obviously I want Kane. I looked earlier, I've had him 5 game weeks this season and he only blanked once. So he didn't do anything wrong, but it's one of those things. I feel like if you've got Haaland and Kane and we're going through singles and doubles, I think it's going to make it harder for me to, navigate things. You can miss out on lucky, inverted commas, hauls. Like, for example, I had Mahrez, didn't I, during the last double? And I was fortunate that I had Mount, so I could sell Mount and go to Mahrez. A lot of people didn't have that route. And I feel like if you say you've got Haaland, Kane and Greenwood, for example, you're probably not going to sell them for any, double game week strikers. Now, obviously, it sounds like I'm trying to excuse not having Kane, but I think there's arguments to not have him. And are you going to be captaining him? Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, that's the thing for me is the captaincy is why, again, we can joke about holding Liverpool players or whatever. I wouldn't, if I had a better team, I wouldn't still have Salah because I would have had a transfer to move him on. Yeah. But, knock-ons of other bad decisions have meant I've held them. Probably similar with not getting Kane in, right? It's one of those, great player, great transfer. But is it my priority? And one of the reasons it hasn't been, I think, is the captaincy. Where am I going to captain him in any week when Haaland is doubling, Arsenal are doubling, Liverpool are maybe doubling? When am I going to give it to Kane? Potentially I should have done, but without the benefit of hindsight, I don't think I ever would have done. And so he's less attractive to me, at least.
So here's a question for both of you then. In game week 25, if it is confirmed that Liverpool double and you got on Kane this week, would you be looking to move Kane to Darwin in game week 25? Because you've already got Haaland. You're not going to be, moving Haaland out, are you? So would that be a move you'd be looking to do? And if it was, is there any point getting Kane anyway because you'd be wanting Darwin into game week 25?
I'd rather captain Salah because of the penalties. it's going to be interesting if that gets dropped in, because if I had Kane, I probably would be very reluctant. A bit like I was reluctant to sell Salah this week. I'd be reluctant to sell Kane, use 2 transfers to get to Salah, but then you're going to be captaining him. So I feel like you'd feel like that you had to, unless you can wangle another way. Maybe you've got Bruno, and you can get the money out somewhere else.
Yeah,
it's a strange season because money does not matter this season, but it does for the really, really expensive players.
Yeah, because people are trying to now get that extra premium, aren't they?
Squeeze it in, yeah.
And
which can then mean you might not be able to get like a Reece James or something, down the line.
Yeah. What about you, Seb? In terms of like this week, I mean, Kane is, in terms of points and in terms of what he's doing this season, one of the best players in the game. Should we be prioritising getting him in when he's got 5 fixtures, no blank in the next 5 weeks, definitely blanks in 28, but we'll probably have a plan for him then anyway. Should that be the priority moving forward?
Maybe, yeah. I won't myself, but again, only because I don't think it makes sense for my squad, not because I'm trying to claim I don't think he's a good pick or anything. To answer that question a minute ago as well, would you do... I guess I'd want it as part of a bit of a hokey-cokey, Kane to Darwin and back again. Yeah, if you've got a confirmed double, yeah, I'd probably do that. I'd want 2 Liverpool, and I mean, Salah and Darwin, sure, haven't been great recently, but in a double week, I'd fancy my chances of getting more points there than any other given player with a single. But yeah, maybe you want Kane back afterwards, so you'd want to do it with specific transfers. By then, though, we're getting close to that free hit and wildcard territory, so maybe you'd go with that for a few weeks.
Yeah. Seb, looking down this list, right down the bottom there, in terms of difficulty of fixture and the amount of fixtures in the next 6 weeks, they're probably only going to have 4 games. Manchester United, we've all got triple ups. Should they be the easiest sell now out of all the players? Like, I wanted to hold Bruno, but I'm looking at this now and thinking doing Bruno to Saka makes so much sense, because Arsenal have potentially 7 fixtures in the next 5 weeks, whereas Man United only have 4. So surely that's the easiest transfer I'm going to make all year.
Yeah, definitely been Man United. At least Shaw and Bruno. Keep Rashford if you like. But yes, you've got what you needed out of them. Move on to teams that have good fixtures and more of them. And just to clarify as well on this table, the final column, the difficulty per fixture, does take into account the number of fixtures. So Man United are getting punished because of their fewer number of fixtures than most people here, not just the difficulty. The final column is difficulty per fixture, but with the number of fixtures taken into account. So you could have hard fixtures, but if you've got lots of them, that might be better than having an easy fixture or 2, but not very many of them. Which is why Man United are so low, because they've just got that blank in there, I think.
This is why, because I know a lot of people thought I was mad, and I probably am, but I was really contemplating not doing Salah to Bruno, and I mean, this highlights exactly why, because once that double's gone for Man United, and don't get me wrong, I'm so glad I did it, but once that double's gone, you look at Liverpool right at the top of this list, and like you say, Man United at the bottom, and that's exactly what it is. It's more fixtures.
Yeah. I think the interest, I was saying to you two just before this, and again, I'll probably keep reiterating this because clearly I feel myself defend my position on Liverpool, but again, I think something nice about this table is you can do a better job of this table, but what things like this do is sort of maybe make us set some of our biases aside, because if the question here is like, oh, is it Darwin or is it Kane or is it Salah or Son or whatever? Well, according to this, the answer is either or both. They're both right at the top here. They're both great options. So then of course we bring our biases in and we bring more information. Like we'll have more information on minutes. We'll have more complex, better metrics than I have here. But it's nice to look at this and just go, oh, well, this model doesn't care about my opinions. All it does is take the numbers I've put in, the simple numbers, and give me an answer. For example, Brighton are still 4th, despite having a blank there. Whatever I've done here, it likes Brighton. So maybe I should still get Matoma.
The funny thing with Brighton is, though, you know how a few weeks ago we were talking about the best midfielder, weren't we? The best Brighton midfielder. And some people did go for Solly March. And obviously that's not getting mentioned. People who've got Solly March in, he's not done anything, and now he's got a blank. I personally quite like McAllister. I think we all talked about McAllister quite a bit. He got unlucky because he got suspended. So he missed the last game. And then he's going to have a blank, and Brighton haven't had a penalty. So it was... I mean, I think most people, Az was very big on Matoma weeks ago, wasn't he? But there would have been some people who decided to go for March or McAllister, and they're probably not sitting that pretty. So that shows the the gamble that's been taken there.
Yeah, I completely agree. Because actually, I saw a few people saying, "Oh, it's such a good decision to get him in," and it's like, yes, because obviously he's got the points, but against Bournemouth, like people were. He was I can't remember when he scored. Was it like the 80th minute,
86th or
85th
something?
minute? Yeah, and it was like, if he had a blanked, is that now a bad decision? Like Seb, you're good at looking at things like this. Like, is that now? If he'd have blanked, is that a bad decision to have brought Matoma in?
I think
Like, are we only going to use the outcome to decide that, or
I think
like,
there's
I don't
quite
know.
a
It's a
neat
funny
answer
one.
to this. And again, to overly defend my terrible take so far this season. But I think Matoma was a good pick, and I think he still is, and I think he always was. And I think we can prove that because in the Game Week 17 Scoutcast, when we were doing the tables and stuff, I tweeted this as well. There's actual proof. I removed Mitoma manually from our tables, so he didn't appear on the Scoutcast because I thought his minutes were too low to qualify for what we were looking at. So we had like March and McAllister and Trossard in there. We didn't have Mitoma. When I was going through the numbers before then, though, per 90, he was, if Trossard was like 0.49, he was 0.51, something like that. That's XGI per 90. So right back then, if someone cared to look and someone cared to go, oh, his minutes have been low, but doesn't matter, he's going to play because I know about Brighton, for example, like Az, all the information was there to make what has turned out to be a good decision. So I think it was a great shout.
His minutes have increased and his stats have dropped off from what I've seen in the last couple of games. Obviously, but he started at at one point, wasn't it, like 0.8 or something? I think they've only just come down to a sort of more natural level. They're still good numbers. Yeah, the last couple of games, though, they've been low XG shots. Anyway, I don't want to sound bitter because none of us have Matoma or Kane, but
I think off the top of my head, it's something. He's got something like 1.5 XG and has scored 4 or 5 goals, something like that. But before any of that happened, he had good numbers. So I guess it's one of those like, it's the opposite to what we actually so often talk about, which is your Lingard or Almiron or whatever, where they're scoring and they shouldn't be doing this. We were getting the information that he should start scoring. What happened is he just scored far, far more than was expected. He did too well, but there was the information there to make a good pick and then to get lucky. Like both things happened, right? You made a good pick and you got lucky, which is great. That's how you do well at FPL.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Right, talking about some of the obvious teams that are on this list. We're looking at Spurs. Is it teams like Spurs? Obviously, Kane is doing very well. Brighton, but they have a blank. Brentford, but they have a blank. Brentford are doing so much better than people think as well. Brentford, but they have a blank. Villa, who obviously just got spanked by Leicester 4-2. We were looking at defensive assets from Villa recently, but we'll come on to that in a minute when we look at the tables. Chelsea, maybe not their attacking assets, but maybe their defensive ones. And Wolves, who obviously don't blank as well and have some nice cheap assets. Now, Seb has made us some nice tables here to have a look at some of the forwards from those teams. Seb, just talk us through the forwards here because we've got somebody that's
just seen that again.
about 3 times as better as everybody else, but of course it's per 90, isn't it?
I'm determined not to repeat my Matoma mistake because there is Joao Felix with his 1 appearance and silly good numbers, which will 100% come down. That's better than Haaland at the moment. It's 1 match, please. Also, people like Cunha, I think, has played 4 or 5 matches, so please take this with a hefty pinch of X-Min's salt.
And Felix didn't play 90 either.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
So per 90. Infinite. So what we've done here is we'll cover Arsenal, Liverpool and City a little more in a minute, but we've spoken about them so much in the past few weeks. What we thought would be interesting is to pull out those other teams that were at the top of this table for, difficulty per fixture, if you like, which was Villa, Brighton, Brentford, Wolves, Tottenham. And then I stuck Chelsea on there as well because they were a little bit low down. They're about mid-table. But we know, there could be something there for Chelsea. They have nice fixtures. If they improve, there are some good traditional fantasy assets. So we wanted to identify, is saying the next Matoma maybe a little bit too on the nose, but a player that may get overlooked. So we have here, I'll hand over to you, Andy, to take through, but we have here the forwards with XGI per 90 so far this season.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And so we've got, at the top, there is Joao Felix there, but obviously he's a bit of an outlier. Tony's still there, 0.68 per 90. Kane, then Ferguson from Brighton, but he is injured at the moment. I'm not sure when he's supposed to be back. Jimenez is next, 0.5. Then Welbeck, Bailey, Watkins, Mbumo, Havertz, Perisic, and then Cunha from Wolves. Rich, when we're looking at this list, you got Tony and Kane at the top there. Obviously, Tony's got the blank, so I think, and he's also got Arsenal next game week, so it's tough to invest in him now. And also, he's not been doing an awful lot recently. Even though they won 3-0 against Southampton, he didn't do anything. Ferguson's next, but one player I did want to ask you about, and he's actually been quietly going under the radar. He's got 2 tricky fixtures next, but Ollie Watkins doesn't look too bad considering he plays in the blank as well. Is he someone we can look at, or are you thinking the same as me, where striker's not really the place you're looking to invest in at the moment?
I'm probably going to stick with five midfielders. However, if I did move to Kane, then maybe I need to start looking at a third striker. Watkins, probably looking at this list, Watkins is one that actually does tempt me because of the blank. Yeah. I know he's very, very frustrating to own. And obviously he just came off quite a large haul, which has probably put him more on our radars. But yeah, I do like Watkins. I do think looking at this entire list, Watkins is one that's very tempting. Bailey as well. I know he's a midfielder, but he's 4.5 million. So both of those Villa players, due to the blank, are quite tempting. Yeah, and I could even see, because of the way value is at the moment, you could even have Watkins as a player you rotate in and out. You don't even have to start him every week, unless you're doing one of these 3 premium teams, I suppose.
And yeah, please excuse my error there. Bailey, who is a midfielder, is on this list, and so is Perisic, who ridiculously still doesn't look terrible. But yeah, I've managed to put a defender and midfielder on here. But you get the
Perisic
idea.
On purpose to make Perisic like as a standout. Like this guy's good.
Yeah. What do you take from this then, Seb? I mean, if I'm, for instance, looking to downgrade someone like Tony at the moment, Ferguson's obviously injured, and he's got the blank as well. But it's tough picking that kind of third striker if you're going to play 3 strikers, or even to go down from Tony to someone cheaper to upgrade in the middle. I think I find it tough to pick forwards.
Well, so I'm on Gnonto, so that's a nice easy bench, I think, which is one of the benefits to having him. And then potentially Andreas moves up, or I can move Gnonto up later. I think obviously someone like Mitrovic isn't here because we haven't put Fulham in this. So there'll be people who have Fulham, have Mitrovic, and maybe won't hate what Fulham have got to come. I think we know that you can do better over the next few weeks than Mitrovic, but we also know he's probably not a terrible hold. Like, he is going to get the numbers probably against anyone if you've got priorities elsewhere. For me, I'll ignore Bailey until the midfield section. I did like Brighton forwards at one point. Didn't get Ferguson closer to Christmas, and like you say, if he's injured now, then he won't be going there. I'd love to try Chelsea at some point. I think it'll be Reece James though, rather than João Felix. So I don't know if there's anything that jumps out at me here, because I think, as Rich said, maybe midfield is where we're going to find our player.
Yeah, and look at that! Look, he's getting used to this hosting lark, isn't he? He's goes a nice little segue onto the midfield section here. Mudryk is actually top of this one. Obviously, per 90, he's going to be a bit more favoured because of how little minutes he's played. Mitoma is next, then Bailey. Sarabia, interestingly, based on the minutes he's played for Wolves so far. Son, Kulusevski, Solimarch, Buendia, Grosh, McAllister. These Brighton lads are everywhere, aren't they? Podence, Ziyech, and then Mason Mount. So, Seb, you've already spoken about Bailey. You wanted to talk about him during the midfielder section here.
He's in it, pleasingly.
Yeah, I know, if he wasn't. Talk us through Bailey, because I think a lot of people would be struggling to pick him when Mitoma's there, wouldn't they?
Yeah, so I guess it's the alternative for this period, right? There may well be, if we don't get the double and we do get a blank, potentially there's a transfer there, but it's fair enough if you don't want to waste your transfer in that position. I think one of the people that does jump out to me here, I guess in a negative sense, is Son. We know he can score outrageous goals. We know that consistently, if anyone is an elite finisher, it's him. So 0.4 might not be too low for him. But he's flanked by, Kulusevski, who's a lot cheaper and in the same team. He's being beaten by Bailey, Mitoma. Like, he's not far off your Gross, your Buendia. Now, of course, this is XGI, so if more of Son's is in goals, then great, you'll get more points. But I want a lot more for Son. I have very little interest in going there, despite a couple of brilliant goals recently.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Rich, Mudrik's obviously on here. It's going to be inflated a bit because of the minutes he's played so far, but there's been flashes that if Chelsea get it together in an attacking sense, he could be somebody to go for.
Yeah, possibly. I just don't think... I think, like Seb's already said, if I'm going to go for a Chelsea, it's going to be Reece James. I think I'm going to find that very, very hard to go against. So Mudryk, I think he's one I'm going to monitor, but because midfield spots are so competitive, like I've got, like many have, 2 Arsenal midfielders, then they're not going anywhere. So that's already 2 of the 5 taken. And then you can see there's a lot of, bargain basement players like Bailey as well. Obviously, I will get Matoma in at some point, just maybe not as soon as some. So I don't know if I have a spot for a Chelsea midfielder.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough ask, especially for a team that's all over the place, has a squad of about 50 and, isn't exactly scoring free-flowing football at the moment anyway.
Mudryk's numbers before Chelsea weren't that good for someone commanding that fee. I think Chelsea have paid for what he will become, not what he is now. And obviously we care about what he is now in FPL, right?
And are they numbers in... Where was he playing? In Ukraine, wasn't
Shakhtar,
he?
yeah. So, they're not even quite up there.
And then moving on to defenders, Seb. So defenders, we've already spoken about the man who's on top at the moment on our forwards list, which is Perisic. Then Reece James, who you both mentioned. Moreno was next. Obviously, he was benched.
With only a couple of matches, of course.
He was benched this week as well, wasn't he? Everybody was expecting him to start for Villa, and obviously he didn't. Badiashile is next, who is a under-the-radar pick, I would say. He's playing every game for Chelsea. Then Estupinan, Chilwell, Me is another player who's doing very well and people don't realise, I think. Thiago Silva, Bueno, Cucurella, Dunk, and Kilman. Worth mentioning as well that Bueno was benched this week, interestingly. So, Rich, is there anybody here that stands out for you that we haven't mentioned yet that could be worth getting? I'm finding it hard to pick players out of here that blank. I feel like you're looking at players here that aren't blanking, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gutted. I went Azpilicueta looking at all those Chelsea defenders. He doesn't even make the list, and not surprising. I mean, I think like a lot of people, I know Praz was really ahead of the curve, wasn't he? He got Mings in because he knew that Villa were going to play in both of those blanks. So I think Mings probably will come in for me. Obviously, like you mentioned with Dean coming in for the last game, even though he got subbed at half time, that's put me going off any other Villa defender. I think the only thing that has slightly turned my head was obviously the Everton performance this week. Tarkowski scored 4.2.
Yeah,
they could fill the same role as Villa. So I think they've given us a choice. We could go for a cheap Everton defender, or we could go for a cheap Villa defender.
Is it reactionary? Is it too? I mean, he's 4.2 million. Like, he can't be completely ignored, can he? And if Sean Dyche can do to them what he did for Burnley, and he's got better players to do it with as well, it could be a bit of a bargain.
It's the blanks, because otherwise you're looking at, I mean, we're talking about Mings against Tarkowski, a Villa defender against an Everton defender. So I don't think it's that exciting. I think it's just going to be pick your poison. And
who would you want? Who would you go for now if you had to pick and you had a transfer and you could use it? Would you go for Mings or would you go for Tarkowski?
I'd probably still go for Mings. But I think before, because there's so few choices in defence, because of these blanks that are coming up, I think I was just going to autopilot to Mings because it makes sense. Obviously, Praz has thought a lot about it, and I looked and I couldn't find anyone better. Now, there's that little bit of, maybe it's trying to be too clever. Now I think there's at least a debate. I still don't think Everton will keep any clean sheets, even with Dyche. But it's the price, 4.2 million.
Yeah. What about you, Seb? Which way would you go?
I mean, all that makes good sense. I was just jumping back to the fixtures there. When you mentioned Everton, just having a look. They're a little bit lower than the teams we pulled out for this, and we didn't pull them out. So the reason they're not appearing is because we didn't pull them out. So they do have fixtures all the way through this little period. A very small chance of a double in 25, according to this, which I guess would be lovely with blanks. But the other team there that I guess just below Villa on this that I quite like, mostly because their blank comes in 28. And if I'm going to be, dead ending around then, maybe I don't mind too much, is Wolves. So they've got a 1.4 chance of a double in 25. And then they have a fixture in the other weeks up to not including Gameweek 28. So looking on this unpopular defender list, put a couple of their defenders on there, or one, potentially Kilman. I think Dawson was hanging around as well. Bueno, obviously, is the player I have at the moment, which would have been lovely to sit on my bench, could come on if needed, but didn't play. So if we think there's a risk there, it feels like a luxury move, doesn't it, to go to Bueno to another defender? But that potentially is the slot in the squad, the slot in our squads that we're talking about. That could be your Mings or your Bueno, or Kilman, I guess, is safer here. So I think I like Wolves, but unfortunately might end up with a non-playing one.
Yeah, it's tough when that happens. I went Patterson on my wild card, expecting them to, maybe play in the blanks, things like that. And obviously he's been out injured since, hasn't he? So
it's such an important decision, but it's also such a boring decision, deciding between these, budget defenders. But we do have to be aware of it. And people have been unlucky with Patterson and Bueno.
Yeah.
They were the budget ones of choice.
Moving on to some more exciting teams then. Teams that don't let us down. Teams that are top of the table and you will always get points from them. Arsenal and Man City. Oh my good God, what an absolute show this week. Arsenal obviously lost 1-0 to Everton. Those were Martinelli. Obviously, I feel like it was a mercy kill, Martinelli going off early, because at least I knew I only got 1 point from him, whereas everybody else had to then suffer the goal being conceded and nobody else doing anything either. Nketiah, Odegaard, Saka, Martinelli. We've obviously got Ben White, Gabriel Saliba. All these players that we were saying are so good. And don't get me wrong, obviously one loss against Everton doesn't change any of that. But my biggest worry is that some of these players are slightly worrying now in terms of rotation. Martinelli and Ben White, we touched on a little bit last week. I said that Martinelli was turning into a real worry for me. And I feel like it's getting worse. And Rich, you sat there and you gave me so much shit last week saying, no, what you doing? What did he do? Went off 58th minute, was it? How do you feel now, Rich? How's it? Do you feel like things have changed, or do you feel like it's still just a bit unlucky?
He wants an apology.
Yeah, it was the first thing I thought of when he got subbed off. I didn't really care about losing the point. I cared because I'd stuck up so passionately for him.
Yeah.
I really didn't like the move. I didn't see Martinelli as that much of a problem. Obviously, Odegaard. He only made it to 70 odd minutes. However, I did say, if I was wildcarding, I'd have Odegaard over Martinelli.
Oh, I see. So you covered yourself. Oh, I get it.
Well, because I am now considering as one of my moves Martinelli to Odegaard because I've got 2 transfers and don't know what to do. But I still don't think Martinelli's a huge problem. I was surprised because Trossard, there was all that news, wasn't there, that Trossard had a kid during the week in a missed training, and the fact that really? Trossard still came on, in the 58th, 59th minute, whatever it was, that was surprising. He wasn't particularly good himself, Trossard.
No.
And I didn't think Martinelli was bad. I think the real thing this game showed was that Saka is the clear leader for midfielders. I know he's more expensive, but he looked brilliant. He was getting doubled up on the entire game, but he still put up some underlying numbers in the game. He looked brilliant. He had a goal cleared off the line, which I've not seen many people talk about. So I think this shows how good Saka is.
Look, how much of a problem is Martinelli? He's got a double game week coming up now. I'm expecting 120 minutes out of him. You don't sell a player for a hit that you think is going to play 120 minutes, do you?
The double game week makes it tougher because something you can't do is react. Let's say in the first game, he gets subbed off after 58 minutes again.
Yeah.
You then have to sit through that second game thinking, oh no. So that kind of is annoying.
Yeah.
I really like him. His stats are still incredible, but obviously these are per 90 stats. And if he's not getting 90, you have to bump it down a little bit.
Yeah.
I kind of hate it because I think he's such a great asset. It's just there's other assets in this team.
Yeah.
I sound so undecided, don't I?
You do, which is weird because you were so sure last week.
Yeah, I
know. Seb, talk us through Arsenal in terms of who have you got in your team at the moment?
I have Gabriel and Martinelli, and I may or may not have acquired another because I'm on tilt, Andy.
You are on tilt. We haven't mentioned that this week. So when you're looking at someone like Saka, for me, he's my top target this week. If you don't have Saka, you've got to get Saka.
Yeah.
Now, if your only way of getting Saka is to sell Martinelli, do you do it?
I'd be surprised if that's your only way, but I guess. But I genuinely can't think of a scenario where the only way you can get Saka is by selling Martin. I guess you have Martinelli, Odegaard, and like White or Gabriel, and you want Saka. Therefore, you do like Bruno to Saka, Martinelli to Matoma, or something like that, or whatever. Yeah. So I guess I want to say yes, but honestly, I've not thought that one through very much because it sounds.
No, that's fine. Well, a different question then. If you couldn't get Saka, or you could only get him for a -4, is that worth doing, or would you just get Odegaard?
I'd be tempted by a -4. I mean, hits are always... There's always the funny thing with hits. Is like, they're never worth it. Like, almost all of the time. And then sometimes it's worth taking about 5 of them. It was that famous one, was it last season? Where we had all those blanks and all those doubles, like, all in that short little period. And actually taking like a -24 was actually basically a positive EV move. But all the rest of the time, it's better just not to take a hit. This is probably one of his edge cases. I've toyed with the idea of like Martinelli to Odegaard for a -4 myself, but that would be after doing 2 other free transfers to really put my team in a place that I like. So it would be very much a luxury move. If you had to lose Martinelli to get Saka for a -4, it's your call on whether you think Trossard is stealing those minutes, right? If Martinelli is nailed for 70 minutes a week, it's probably not worth it. If he's going to start dropping below 60, if Trossard's going to get a start. And what Rich said there, which I think is a very nice point about that, if he doesn't play the first or subs early in the first, you can't react. You have to watch another game before you can make your move. I think that's where it comes down to if you think it's worth or not. It's your prediction of the minutes of those 2 players.
Yeah. All right then, Rich. What about Saka for a -4 or getting Nketiah for one of your strikers? Which one do you think is better?
That's probably an example. I've been quite hit averse because what I'm saying is, with the doubles and blanks, it's really going to be hard to navigate. I think I would rather do the -4, despite what this, the chart says with the XGI.
Yeah,
I would rather do the hit and get Saka. I think the main reason for that is, Jesus, while he may not be that close, he's going to come eventually. And I think Nketiah will be hard to move off. And then you've got further transfers to get Saka. And yeah, I'm not really a huge Nketiah fan. I think if you can, if you've got Saka already, bring him in, he's brilliant. But I think that Saka's 4 points is going to gain you more than 4 points between now and when you free hit or wild card or whatever you're doing.
Yeah, and just those fixtures as well. Like knowing he is nailed in this team and getting all the minutes as well with their potential 7 fixtures coming up in the next 5 weeks. I think it's really tough to not go with him.
Yeah, especially if, I don't know if anyone is going to be captain an Arsenal player in the coming weeks.
I was just about to say this, yeah.
It would be Saka, wouldn't it?
Would you captain
penalties
this week?
as well? We've not mentioned penalties. He has penalties. Well,
would you captain Saka this week, Rich?
They've got 2 home fixtures, haven't they? I've genuinely thought about it, but then I think about why I've had a bad season, and that's been not captaining Haaland. And again, it's like we said about, not the worst thing about a double game week is not being able to react. And so if you captained, Saka, and then you see something, and then Haaland and City go crazy again, it's just going to be a horrible, horrible week.
Mate, Tarkowski scored against Arsenal. Haaland's got
this. True.
Yeah. What about you, Seb?
Captain Haaland. Yeah, I'm pretty set on that. Like, unless we get some sort of information that changes that. I'm very happy to fall on the wrong side of it, but I think it's one of those, if we do this, 10 times, I think enough times out of 10, Haaland beats Saka for that to be in the choice I'm comfortable with. One more player I'd love to throw up just before we move on from the last section, actually, is we're speaking about Perisic. Tottenham have signed Pedro Porro as well, of course, who is a right wing back, a very, very good one, and a proper wing back, if you like. He doesn't appear on any of these tables because he's not played yet. 5 million, I think. If you fancied a gamble, and we know that Conte with his wing backs can maybe mislead us in terms of who we think is the pick and then it isn't. So it is a gamble. But if you did want a Tottenham defender, you did want one for what I think is probably a good price, especially if you liked Matt Doherty in the past, there's nothing not to like about Porro when you think he starts.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I know Baker from Above Average has done lots of stuff on Pedro Porro, and his stats look very, very good. Talking of obviously exciting teams, we've done Arsenal now. Let's look at City. Yeah, so Haaland's obviously on top in terms of XGI per 90. KDB's next when he isn't benched. Mahrez is third. Grealish fourth. Foden fifth when he isn't benched. Rico Lewis next, interestingly. Then Ake, then Akanji. What do you even say about City at the moment? Obviously, for the last 3 or 4 seasons, they've been, best team in the league or second best team in the league by a point. They're incredible on their day. There's an awful lot of unrest at City at the moment. It sounds like more and more players are wanting to go and are almost going. There's a change of system there. KDB's being benched. Second time he's been benched against Spurs now. It just is all screaming to me that this is a transition year, very, very similar to Liverpool's. Obviously, we've got Haaland that everybody owns and everybody pretty much captains most weeks anyway. Apart from that, Seb, who can we trust in this City team? I genuinely, I'm almost at the point now of thinking Haaland and that's it. The rest of them just aren't worth the issue.
So Haaland, easy, right? I don't think anyone's going to argue there. Maybe you have a discussion over the captaincy, but no one's selling him. I think Ederson is the second best. And I know people are divided on that. People don't agree. Fair enough. Hear all the arguments about you can get better value goalkeepers. I agree, you can. But I don't think you can get a better value City defender. And we've seen that since the restart. Despite City not being as good defensively as we want, Ederson is the only one there who's consistently there, especially when people are fit. I know Akanji's been there a lot as well. He's outscored KDB by a little bit, I think, although KDB's been unfortunate. And I think their defence, off the top of my head, they might have, it's either 17 or 19. It's one of those odd numbers in the high teens. XG conceded, so expected goals against so far this season, which puts them the best in the league, second to, I believe, Arsenal. However, in terms of actual goals conceded, Newcastle have conceded like 12 or something, which is crazy because they've had about 20 XGA. And City are well behind. They're on about 20 or something like that conceded themselves. So they've underperformed. Newcastle massively overperformed. Again, we use overperform and underperform just to mean statistically. If that's because they've got a brilliant goalkeeper, entirely fair enough. Valid reason. So I think you could say, it's because City are, for whatever reason, conceding from chances that are created in such a way that they concede that other teams don't, or Ederson's off it. Entirely fair enough. Not going to argue with you on that. For me, I think XGA is a better predictor. Other people may think actual goals conceded. That's entirely fair. But that's why I would put Ederson second on my list, whereas other people may put him third, or even just not on their list. And then I think it's that third spot that is the interesting one. It's, do you go for another defender? Which I think is probably Akanji in terms of, for the fixture period we want, he's the most likely to play in the various systems that they will play and with the injuries. Maybe followed by Ake, Lewis if you want to save some money. And then Mahrez, KDB. I will quote what Luke Disable was saying about KDB and trying to explain why we think he didn't play and his chances of playing in the future. You mentioned that he didn't play Tottenham previously as well. It's the 5 at the back. Pep seems to be going with an Alvarez and Haaland in those fixtures to try and get more bodies in the box, more touches in that area of the pitch. I'm not sure that worked, but it is what he's been going for, and it's KDB that tends to drop out in that. Luke was saying that injury, rest, anything like that aside, he would expect KDB to play all the fixtures we want coming up, apart from potentially the Forest one, because I think it comes just before the Champions League, which is where KDB may well get his rest, along with other players. Maybe that's one to look at Haaland for, because that is the one time really that Pep may rest City players. One thing I considered personally, before I hand over to Rich here, is with my second transfer, doing Salah to KDB. Because if he does start both in the double, and I think there's a very good chance, he's probably up there with, what do you reckon, he's got a better chance than Mahrez, or at least about the same, maybe just under? His points potential is still big. He's still a brilliant player. He has underperformed a little bit recently. He's also probably not performed as well. But we've discussed that already, right? You don't need to be performing at your very best to still score plenty of points. Otherwise, I'd go a defender. That's maybe a slightly easier move, but a lot of people won't trust their defence. Over to you, Rich. Oh, sorry,
Rich,
Andy, that's your job.
No, it's fine. Yeah. Rich, I suppose there's 2 ways of looking at it, isn't there? There's either KDB is ruined as an FPL player this year, or this is brilliant for all those who already have KDB or are going to move back to KDB, because if he's going to get 2 games in a row now, it's going to be now, isn't it, in a double game week?
Yeah, I think people who've got Man City players now are in a pretty good position because you're just going to hold them and see what happens. So I think that applies to KDB. I think it applies to Mahrez. And I mean, it's good that Seb mentioned Luke, because Luke predicted or said there was a good chance of, KDB being benched in both of those Spurs fixtures. So I don't think it was like completely unforeseen. Like it was in some way predicted. Obviously it could have been wrong. So if I had KDB, I'd happily hold. I don't. I think what's interesting is if someone has like Bruno, for example, I think I'd still move. No, I definitely would move for either KDB or Mahrez.
Yeah.
I think we forget or people can forget after bad results how good City are. And it sounds crazy even having to say it. But I mean, their last 2 home games, for example, they've scored 7 goals against Tottenham and Wolves, who aren't, horrific teams. So I think no matter what, I'd want 3 Manchester City going into it. On the Edison point, I mean, yeah, he's not been great. I wish I had started with Kepa, but it saves so many transfers. Just having Edison, I'm pretty calm. Just play him. Yeah. It'll be the second double game we've got with him. Points haven't been good, but I don't think goalkeepers are that predictable. But after we discussed about goalkeepers last week, they do very, very well, or they're projected to do well, in double game weeks.
How shaky would you be if you still had your triple captaincy now and you were planning on using it on Haaland? Because you both said, didn't you? I'm going to bring it up, lads. I'm going to bring it up.
I'll do it.
You said you wouldn't have gone for Rashford. You'd have gone for Haaland this week.
Yeah.
Would you be feeling shakier about that now, or would you be saving it, or would you just be sticking it straight on Haaland this game?
I'd be excited. I'd have it activated already. No, I genuinely would. There's a lot more, game weeks coming up where you're looking at bench boosts, free hits, wild cards. If you've still got it, I'm jealous of people who can captain Haaland this week or triple captain Haaland this week.
What about you, Seb?
Yeah. I mean, I guess
bit more of a pause there.
Well, I was just sort of thinking, like, I guess, we're halfway through a week where I wouldn't have used it on Rashford. So I've only kind of got Haaland left. But yeah, I would have, I think we said last week, that's what I would have done. Whether it would have paid off or not, I don't know. But yeah, I'd be very, very happy with that.
It's obviously we're still saying that City can be great. There's going to be weeks where they score 3-4 goals in a fixture again. I'm not saying that they're done as a team, if that makes sense. But Seb, this is a different season for City this season, isn't it? It does look like not everything is right, that players aren't happy, that things like that. In terms of that, obviously we've got a double game week this week, which kind of changes things a little bit. But does that hurt their potential to be assets for us moving forward? Like, we've mentioned the players we would own. Is there a world you can see yourself only owning Haaland moving forward?
I guess there is when we're wildcarding and maybe Edison is no longer the best pick in terms of what I can get fixtures out of goalkeepers or defenders. And I don't fancy any other, KDB would be too expensive and I wouldn't captain him, and I don't fancy any others for minutes. So yes, I can definitely see a world where I just have Haaland, but I think it would be as a function of blanks and doubles rather than as a function of City not performing to a level where I trusted having 3 of them.
Yeah, fair enough. And same with you, Rich, because I know you've historically absolutely loved owning City players.
Yeah, I mean, they've scored the most goals in the league by far. They've scored 53 goals, not even using expected goals. They've scored by far the most goals. I also found it quite funny because I think, obviously, Man City or Haaland in particular, there was that narrative for ages that he's every week you should captain Haaland. Me and Seb got quite stung by that because we were looking at other options who won't be named. And now, City, I don't think they've been that bad recently. They've not had results you'd expect, but they've still had, brilliant performances in there. The home games, especially 2-0 down against Spurs and 1-4-2. So yeah, I'd be excited to triple captain Haaland. I'm excited having 3 Man City assets. I just think it's just short term, isn't it? They're second in the league. Most goals scored in the league. Only Arsenal conceded less goals than them.
I think, Rich, us sort of, looking elsewhere for captaincy, not all the time, but when we thought there was a better option in the first half of the season.
No, of course.
Is now such a Pyrrhic victory as well, though, because it's like, we were right at our lowly ranks and still now trying to captain Haaland anyway. It's like, but
that was the argument against it, wasn't it? Oh, it's Haaland. Oh, it's Man City.
It's funny how quickly that gets forgotten, and it's like, you just got to captain Haaland every week.
Yeah.
And I think the argument was you can captain him every week if you want, but you don't have to. And now we're just seeing people forget about that and talk about not captaining him. doesn't mean either of those sides are right. I think the thing that's
Right.
right or wrong is just not being absolutist about it.
Mhm. Interesting.
Although
Right,
I am
now
being
moving on.
absolutist, saying I'd definitely have 3 Manchester
fair.
City players for this double.
I definitely have 2 at least. I would definitely have 2.
I've got 3 because John Stones is there. Right, so moving on to Liverpool next then. And Liverpool, obviously, we're going to be talking about because they could have a lot of fixtures moving forward. We've spoken about them a little bit already. Nunes is top for their XGI per 90, then Salah, then Firmino, then Jota. I don't know when did he play this season?
Oh, so I've put Firmino and Jota in here. I haven't put Diaz because their return date, just FPL app, was 18th of February, which someone will tell me what game week it is. Call it 24, maybe 25. So I thought they could be relevant. If we're buying a player now for that period of fixtures up till 28 that we were looking at, I thought a bit like Jesus, you just want to be aware of them. Even if you're not going to pick them, these are players that either could be a transfer in the future or, the more likely scenario, they steal minutes off the transfer you're making now.
Yeah, interesting. Rich, I know you have already said, you'll be on double or triple Liverpool if they do double in 25. I can't remember what you said earlier, whether you would go for Nunes. Would it be Salah and who? Would it be Trent would be your second or third one? What would you be going with?
I kind of hate talking about Liverpool because I don't want to read the comments.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about if this double gets confirmed, going Salah and Darwin, and then potentially Alisson as my goalkeeper, because I don't have unlimited funds, so I probably couldn't stretch to Robertson or dare I say it, Trent. So I probably would look at Alisson.
Okay.
But I don't know. I mean, I doubt I'd rotate Alisson and Edison because that sounds quite expensive. So it probably would be an Edison replacement if I did it.
Yeah. I would love for you to own the two Brazilian goalkeepers in FPL.
Rotate them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And everyone else is sat there with Kepa getting 15 points every week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, obviously we won't talk about Liverpool too much because we don't even know whether they're definitely going to double in 25. But if they do, I think closer to the time we'll probably do a bit of a deep dive to see which one is less bad out of all their players.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if Jota's coming back, I mean, potentially he could knock some minutes off Darwin. So again, that's probably why I'd rather captain Salah in that game week.
Yeah. Interesting.
The thing for me,
right,
I'd just love to throw on this real quickly, if that's okay.
Oh, go on.
Is rather than talking about individuals, we've done that to death. But the interesting comparison to City and their drop-off and Liverpool's drop-off. City, since Guardiola has been at City, according to Understat, City have won every single league, on expected points, which obviously, is more than just expected goals or whatever. It looks at each result and sees if it had gone the way of the expected result, what would have happened, who would have topped the table. City have won every single title since Guardiola joined, which I think includes the Leicester season, was it 2015-16? Includes all the seasons where they also beat Liverpool, but also the season Liverpool beat them. City, despite being about 20 points behind, won it on expected numbers. And this season, they are still ahead of Arsenal. Now, not for 1 second am I saying, therefore, they should win the league. It's just an interesting thing to note that one of the metrics that we think is a good predictor of performance thinks that generally their performance is good. However, it is below levels when they've, of course, been at their best this season. So it also notes a drop-off. Even though it says maybe they should be beating Arsenal, it does note a drop-off in performance. The reason I mention it with Liverpool up on screen is because whenever they've had one of their brilliant seasons, high 90s points when they won the league as well, they, of course, had good expected numbers. But the thing that really made them stood out is they massively overperformed that. And that isn't a criticism. I think we saw that Mane, Salah, Firmino, that midfield, Van Dijk, but Alisson were so good that, of course, they were overperforming their numbers because they were the best players, the best team in the world. We've seen them absolutely crash off. Despite City not being the City we want, they're still top of the league for those expected numbers. Liverpool are 5th, I think, off the top of my head, which is nothing to be ashamed of, but Liverpool probably shouldn't be 5th. And so if anyone has properly dropped off, despite, having Nunes and Salah, there's absolute evidence that it is indeed Liverpool.
Spoken like somebody that owns Salah and Darwin. Right, moving I'm hoping
on for the opposite.
Yeah.
I've just realised I'm in control of it. I don't have to move on. I can keep onto your team, my friend. Onto your team.
So onto our team. So these are our best teams before we've done anything. I don't think any of us have made a move yet, although I do know some people in the community that have. We've got I've got Kepa in goal, then I've got Trippier, White, and Shaw that are playing in defence for me at the moment. Rashford, he's not going to be my captain. He's there as captain at the moment, but it will be Haaland. Martinelli, Fernandes, De Bruyne. Then I've got Tony, Haaland, and Mitrovic with Ward, Andreas Pereira, Stones. Oh, still hurts. And Patterson on the bench there. Fairly set up. I've only got one free transfer. I have been really kind of all over the place in terms of what I'm going to do. I have been very tempted. My first thing, and I'm probably going to go back to this now, was just doing Bruno to Saka, which seemed the most obvious. Bruno's obviously only got 4 fixtures in the next 6. Saka could have 7. It just seems sensible to do that. But I've got Tony there, who obviously has got Arsenal away, and then has got a blank, but does play and is on penalties. So that isn't the worst hold to have. I've got Stones there, who I could take out and bring in another City defender who should play 2 fixtures in the game week. But whether he does, I don't know. And then is he any better than Shaw? So I'm probably just going back to keeping it really simple and doing Bruno to Saka, to be perfectly honest. The rest of the team looks fine. You know, Mitrovic plays Forest at home. He's got penalties. Tony's obviously on penalties. If I bring in Saka, he's on penalties. The rest of it doesn't look too bad. Martinelli isn't amazing, but 120 to 130 minutes in the double game week isn't awful. So, yeah, it's okay. I think keep it simple. That's what I've done all year, and my rank's been okay because of that. So I think Fernandes to Saka probably makes a lot of sense. Seb, have you got anything?
Well, the way we set all of this up was to help you answer the Harry Kane question, wasn't it? You know, we were looking at what we were going to do tonight. Yeah, because you've been pretty hot on Harry Kane, though, or you may be off that again.
Well, the other thing I could do is kind of in installments, I could get to Kane. So I move Fernandes down to Odegaard, not Saka. I move Stones down to Tarkowski, and then Tony moves up to Kane.
Okay.
So I would do that across 2 weeks.
I feel like that's one of those you wish you would have done that a few weeks ago. By the time you get to it, it'll be like,
exactly.
Why? So I think it's relatively straightforward. Right? Fernandes to Saka is locked. Do that.
Yeah.
And then I think it's whether you want to take a -4 to do Stones to like Akanji, play him over Tony. That comes back to our City chat and how much you'd want to triple up there. It's a -4, so obviously it's you have to be pretty confident in it. I think those are the only things you really need to consider. Everything else is fine.
Yeah. Thing is as well, like taking Stones out, I get another player for the blank, which does help a little bit as well. Like if I go for someone like Akanji, the only problem with City is that you're getting them for the double, they might not play both. You get them for the blank and they might not play that fixture. So it seems a real gamble going for that. If I did do Stones, I'm actually more than tempted to do Stones to a cheap defender that plays in the blank, which would be someone like Tarkowski or Mings or something like that, to free up funds to maybe upgrade Tony eventually. But yeah, it just seems all a bit weird at the moment. I don't know, Rich, what you think?
You were getting very close. I was just writing down because you've only got 1 free transfer, right?
Yeah.
There was a -8 I'd consider. But I think I'd prefer it if it was just a -4, like if you had 2 free transfers. But it would be Mahrez, Saka. Well, no, you'd sell Bruno, Andreas, and I've written these all down wrong. I thought I was being organised writing this down. Okay, so Bruno to Mahrez, Andreas to Saka, and then you'd obviously have to downgrade Stones. And I wrote down Mings or Tarkowski because you're getting rid of 2 players who blank in 25.
Yeah.
You're getting rid of 2 who blank in 25 and then getting in players who don't blank in 25 as well. But obviously it's a -8.
Yeah.
And you'll have Mahrez and De Bruyne. But the good thing, I guess we've not mentioned with a double, is even if Man City players play once, getting Man City players for 90 minutes, obviously it depends on if you think Man City are good or not, is like a good thing. So if you got, say, 70 minutes in one game from Mahrez and 30 in the other, 100 minutes of Mahrez, I mean, that's good. You'll take that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I think Saka was always my biggest thing this week. Every time I've tried to look at other routes, when I thought about getting Odegaard in, it just seemed not optimal because I wanted Saka. And that was the biggest thing. Like Saka on pen, Saka with the X minutes, Saka with the double game week, Saka that we've even spoken about, could we captain him? Like Saka's the one I want, if I'm perfectly honest.
kept
And I
telling
can
you
even
this.
do.
I've been saying this every week.
I know.
Sell
you
Almiron,
have.
sell Almiron. Yeah.
Oh, I got Almiron instead of Saka after the World Cup.
Yep.
Anyway, and obviously Martinelli, I could even move down to Matoma after game week 25. And the closer I get to game week 28, is less I'm going to want Kane. So, yeah, it is what it is. I think I'll just do Bruno to Saka. And then I think that team is pretty much fine. It's just whether I do the Stones to somebody move. But even then, it's a -4 for another fixture over Shaw against Leeds. Managerless Leeds at the moment as well. Is it worth that? I'm not sure.
Depending on work out though your future moves ahead of 25, because if Stones is out a while, you're going to have to get rid of him eventually anyway.
I am, yeah.
So it would just be bringing it forward. Because if you then need to start getting players for any potential doubles,
it feels like a lot of those Reece James owners that have kept Reece James for so long and now he's relevant again. And it feels like I'll do the same with Stones, because I just keep looking at it and thinking it's obviously the midfielders and strikers that I want to change, and Stones just keep staying there all the time. But I feel like if I'm going to change him, it needs to be this week, when the double game week obviously helps in terms of mitigating that -4. Or what I could do, and Seb will love this, I could move Stones out first and then move Saka out. So really, I'm only taking the -4 for Saka.
It's basically a -2, mate, in a double, right? It's basically a -2.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
and Saka,
make another, because then it's a
-4.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably what I'm going to do, and then I'll make a decision close to the time. Maybe I'll slide into Disable's DMs and see what defender he would go with. But I'm assuming it would be Ake or Akanji. But yeah, right. Moving on, because we spoke about my team for far too long. Rich's team.
Yeah, so I've got two transfers and 3.9 million in the bank. I've already got 3 Arsenal players and 3 City players, and they're ones that I'm happy with. So, I mean, obviously I have to use a transfer. So my original plan was Bruno back to Salah if there's a double game week. I've gone a bit cooler on that now because we know Bruno's on penalties. And part of me going for Salah was hoping they get a double, and obviously he's on penalties. It doesn't feel quite as appealing because I know Bruno could just get a few penalties for United. If I'm picking expensive players based on a lucky event, I've considered I could bring back in James, because I've got on the bench, I've got Azpilicueta and Dunk. Obviously, Dunk has a blank, but then he might double. Azpilicueta doesn't have a blank, but he doesn't play. So that's another possible one. Or I could just do the Martinelli to Odegaard move, because I feel like I'm pretty set with my team. I've even got a minor bench headache with, Shaw against Dunk. Obviously, Man United players need to go, but if I can go into next week with 2 transfers, even better. I do have a route to Kane as well. I can do Mitrovic to Kane if I downgrade Fernandes by like 0.7 million or 0.8 million.
That's actually not that bad. Nice.
For free as well.
I guess the question is who does... I mean, maybe Matoma. That's obviously much more of a downgrade, but you'd say, it's only 0.7, but it's like, well, who's in that like high 8s, low 9s range? So you end up going further down, which isn't a bad thing by any means. But I wonder if that's worth having that money just sat not working for you.
I think that's it. I think that's part of why I'm not as keen on Bruno to Salah now. I wouldn't mind having 2 transfers next week, still having, about 4 million in the bank, and then I can go anywhere. I could still go to Kane down the line. Obviously, I don't really want to get rid of Mitrovic when he's got Forest at home. So, I mean, a pretty boring situation.
I'm Azpilicueta to James and roll. That's the flex.
Yeah. Although it does take some money out the team for an injury-prone player who might not even play in the blank.
That's Reece James, mate. That's what you buy a ticket to, right? That's the roller coaster.
I think I'd do Aspi down to a cheap player that plays in the blank, personally.
I'd
move him down to Mings or Tarkovsky. Personally, as soon as I looked at your team, I love your team for this week. I think your team is absolutely lovely this week. Sorting out that bench, use the opportunity to get rid of Azpilicueta, personally.
The one dilemma with that, and this is really boring, is I could sell Dunk instead of Azpilicueta, because obviously Brighton blank, while Azpilicueta doesn't play, if I need him in the blank, he might come in with a 1-pointer, whether he's my 11th or 12th man. Yeah. Now I'm thinking about really small things, though, like trying to gain that extra point.
Yeah.
But
I personally, that's what I would do. I do like the idea of getting Kane, but you can do that the week after as well. Like I think taking this opportunity, you're in a rare position where you can get rid of a player that probably shouldn't be in your team.
Yeah, no, it's weird, but it is part of that. I know
You won't
going
do that, though.
Edison over Kepa's been bad points wise,
Yeah.
but it's helped me keep the transfers.
I mean, I feel like I know the answer to this, but if anyone's in a position to do Martinelli to Odegaard, you are.
Yeah, yeah, and it is tempting.
Yeah,
guys. So I hate losing Martinelli. I don't feel like I'm gaining that much. Well, I am. I'm gaining some potential minutes, I guess.
Yeah. Moving on to a less good team, Seb.
Yeah, fair enough.
Oh, don't no! You do such a good wounded puppy. You do. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, no, you should be defending yourself. It makes me feel bad.
When I get back to a decent rank, I'll refine some ego. So I have Edison in goal, Shaw, Trippier, Gabriel, Salah, Rashford, and a transfer. Saka is there. Martinelli, Darwin up front. Although is he up front really? Is that just 2 points? Haaland captain and Gnonto starting there. Although I guess I'd probably change that because he's got Man United at home. Obviously not in a double this time. I do, however, still have one transfer left. I've used one to do Fernandes to Saka. The second is either going to be Cucurella to Akanji or Salah to De Bruyne. It will be one of those two. Not sure which. Maybe the former, just because I guess I want to keep Salah and keep hurting myself. That's the reason, isn't it? I just love punishment, so I will keep Salah. And there's every chance Salah becomes De Bruyne for me. And I guess I'd still have Darwin. So yeah.
Yeah, and you've made a move already. You moved on
did
to
Fernandes
Saka
to
already.
Saka for mate. You're goading of me, but like, you don't make any transfers. So I've decided to prove you wrong. It's just money things.
You do it every week now.
Yeah, exactly. It's just money things, and without Saka playing, and also with, I guess, I mean, I still wouldn't advise it to anyone else. I guess I'm just doing it because I've lost. I've lost a lot of value on this team because I've been rubbish. So maybe I'm just trying to claw some of that back and some of my respect. But I think having the spare transfer, having the other free transfer, provides me a safety net, which it definitely shouldn't. Because if I have to use that to fix like an injured player, then I don't get De Bruyne or whatever. But that makes me feel a little more comfortable. So I'm happy to chase that 0.1, which did happen as well. Saka went up, was it last night?
Yeah, he did, yeah.
Yeah. So Fernandes would have to go up twice to make that up if I'd held on to him. So I'm very happy with that.
Yeah. Rich, any thoughts?
How much money did you have in the bank again?
Oh, I cannot remember, but more now because I did Fernandes to Saka. So call it probably like 1-something, 1.7, 1.5, something like that.
Okay. I was thinking if you could go Andres to Mahrez.
Oh, no, yeah. So I know I can't do that. My route to City is either sort of a Cucurella to Akanji or Ake, or like a Salah to De Bruyne. I guess Salah to Mahrez would be fine. Also, again, chat mentioned, you'd mentioned Gnonto. Completely agree. I've got another transfer to make, and so then I would, for example, if I bought in Akanji for Cucurella, I would play him over Gnonto. So he's currently just in there because that's how the team was lined up last time.
Yeah.
It's a tricky week for transfers, this. I'm looking at all of our teams and it's like a headache.
Pretty sure I could still get Matoma as well. So maybe I am just in denial.
And you're going to bench Kepa.
Yeah, well, of course, mate. Edison's got a double, so I want my sweet 1 times 2 points. I think the thing for me is I was trying to plan out my transfers over a little while as well. So whatever I do this week, the one I looked at was if I did Cucurella to a City defender, it would then be, got to remember this off the top of my head now. I was looking at rolling, then removing Shaw to, I can't remember now. I sent it, it was removing, I think it Shaw to like a Stupnian, Andreas to Matoma or something in 26. Before that, I would have had, I think it would have been like Trent Alexander-Arnold to get through the blank and have another Liverpool player just because it works out nicely. And then arrive, hopefully dead ending towards that 28-29 period with a team that navigates it without any hits. I think currently I only have 3 or 4 blankers, so that would be fine. So hopefully, not by any means will I claw back, enough rank, but hopefully being patient over this period where I have been poor will yield some returns, when I get these extra transfers and a team lined up nicely for the coming period.
Yeah, lovely. Right, now we've looked at 3 teams. Now to look at the team, the community team. Is it still top at the moment?
Oh, mate, it's like 77k now.
Oh,
it's doing great.
God. So obviously the community team, Seb and Rich, talk us through your baby, the community's creation. Obviously it's doing very well.
So the team is, despite Edison in goal and Leno on the bench, it's Edison, Trippier, Gabriel and Shaw. Captain Rashford, not triple, just double. Fernandes with the vice, which was our move. We did De Bruyne to Fernandes, which was nice work. Saka, Martinelli and Matoma with the 11 there. Haaland and Kane up front. The community very deliberately wanted Kane to start as well. We were doing the transfer poll and the benching poll, and before we even got to the benching poll, Kane was on the bench because of just how I'd lined the team up, and people were very adamant on that, so that was a lovely shout. We then have Leno, Dunk, Botman and Greenwood on the bench.
Yeah, it's looking good, that, isn't it? It's looking
Great
like a good
squad.
team. What I'm assuming Fernandes to KDB they're thinking.
I mean, you'd have to ask them, wouldn't you? They're better at this than
Yeah.
us. They should have the podcast. I don't know what we're doing over there.
Didn't we come up with something that said there was a punishment if you finished below the community team?
No,
And
that
if all
doesn't. That
three
doesn't
of us
sound.
finished-
That
wasn't
doesn't
on
sound
it.
like a thing I'd do. That's too risky. Yeah, we'll do something. Yeah, if the community beat us, we'll think of something nice. Because this is lovely work as well. And actually, so we're moving these goalposts because I did add another little team into our notes. Now this is, I have asked the team as well if they're happy to share this. This is the analytics hive mind team. So the idea here is that people who like to play FPL with a sort of analytical approach have a team which is democratically run by I think there's about 15 of us. We vote on transfers, very similar to the community team. We vote on transfers each week. This is the team I banged the desk. This is the team we currently have. It is Edison, Gabriel, Shaw, Trippier, Dunk, Saka, Matoma, Rashford captain. See, Matoma is an analytics pick. Salah and Fernandes vice captain. Haaland up front with a bench of Leno, Mitrovic, Ake and Greenwood. They are currently ranked 12k, which in the sort of, again, the people who contribute towards this, there's a league. This team is ahead of all of us but one person who is about 7k. So not only do I think this team is doing well this season, it's doing better than all the individuals that have contributed to it. So I have a new goal for our community. We must take this team down because we can't be losing to not only a machine, but a hive mind machine.
It's going to be hard for me because my first 11's the same, but I've got Mahrez over Matoma.
Nice. Right. Moving on then to two things before we go on to the questions. And this is going to be quite quick because we're already on an hour and a half tonight. First off, Az is leaving Scout, his role in Scout. He is still doing videos for us, but obviously he is a man close to everybody's heart in Fantasy Football Scout. And we're obviously gutted that he's going to be leaving his role. He's the first person we go to for help, and he is the first person to reply and get everything sorted for us. So we will miss his role, but obviously he's still going to be doing videos with us. But I know Seb and Rich, you will join me and everybody in the community as well and say we'll miss him in what he does for all of us behind the scenes. So if you are... Oh,
No, please, sorry.
I was going to say, so if you would like to show your appreciation to Az, please put a few claps in the chat and we'll show him later on. What were you going to say?
I'm so sorry I cut you out there at that moment. I just wanted to add that he's obviously a terrible, terrible FPL player and a serial tweeter, but he is he is a genuinely lovely man. Like, you take Twitter nonsense and FPL nonsense away. I have WhatsApped him on more than one occasion late at night to do with FPL, to not to do with FPL. He is a genuinely lovely man. And you don't see him on these streams each week or in the chat or anything, but he makes this happen or has made this happen for all the time we three have been doing it, I think. And yes, I believe he will still be doing Black Box. So you still get to see plenty of Az. He'll be doing a team reveal as well on the Scout channel.
Yeah, lovely stuff. And then Rich, over to you about Gameweek 39.
Yeah, so as some of you may know, you can go on Twitter. It's at GW39FPL. But the tickets are on sale for Gameweek 39, which Az played in actually back in May. You were commentating, weren't you, Andy?
Yeah, I was.
Did a couple of foul throws along with Praz. But yeah, tickets are on sale now. So it's a charity football match. I believe they raised about £6,000. It may have even been more for Street Child UK, which I know Gianni's in the chat. Gianni works very closely with them. So it'll take place. It's Saturday, the 3rd of June in Birmingham, and features the likes of Ben Crellin, Az, Gianni, James and Sid from Planet FPL, Ben Dinnery, Raptor, David Monday, and they've got a commentary upgrade this year as well. So I hear in the commentary box, and it's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. So I'm on holiday. So I'm not going to be able to do it. I was absolutely gutted when I worked out the dates, because it is genuinely one of the best things I've ever done with this community was commentate and just go. Like, it was absolutely fantastic to go. Rich was there. You were doing the fantasy points, weren't you, and sorting all that out.
The assists.
Yeah,
that caused no drama at all. Actually, when I was slagging off the Saka thing the other week, I should have thought back to that, how difficult it is to do that. But this was without replays.
But it is absolutely fantastic. So if you do get a chance to go, even if you just watch it, like, it's just so good to see everybody that you've known from the community in real life. It is absolutely brilliant. So do make sure you give it a go. Right, on to some community questions, which is going to be the quickest community questions I think we've ever done. So can you chuck your questions into the chat, please? And we will answer as many as possible. We had about 800 people earlier on, which was absolutely fantastic. So thank you for joining us tonight.
And then it went down when we started talking about Salah.
Yes, it did. Yeah, and as. So if you could chuck your questions in, please. Make sure you give us a like as well. That would be absolutely great if you could. Let's have a look. So we got Michael Scott, who's usually in here as well. I always think of The Office. With Tomiyasu and increasing risk to White's play time, is it worth switching to Gabriel as a long-term move using a free or as part of a -4? Seb, got to be quick though.
Gabriel's a better pick, but I wouldn't be too worried about having to move off White. I think he'll be fine. Although I thought Martinelli would be fine.
Nice. Yeah. And Rich?
Not for a hit.
No. Rock and Roll says, why does everyone have the same team apart from one or two players, Rich?
Well, is a player Kane? There's not many players to pick from, is there?
Because we all just copy Raptor.
No. Yeah. We are. Yeah. Raptor Kane? Team 2, Raptor Team 3. FPL Rank Chaser says, would you sell Martinelli for Odegaard? I've already got Saka. If that means having to have Mahrez instead of KDB, or do I just keep Martinelli? What do you think, Seb?
I'll go with yes, because I'm assuming that doesn't involve points hits or stuff. So, yeah, sounds a reasonable sacrifice for the short term.
Yeah. And Rich?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I like Mahrez almost as much as KDB. It'd be my preference, but I don't think there's that much between them.
Yeah. FPL Spartans and losing commentary. I know, to Rich as well. Like Tildesley. No, I know. Like Tildesley losing out to Matterface. Yeah, it's exactly what it's like, actually. Stewart's inquiry.
Hey.
Yeah. Oh. No, it was the other one. It was the one that always used to do ITV and he was dreadful. Oh, I can't remember his name now.
What was that you?
It's gone. No, it's gone. Yeah, that's me. The Jukebox says, who is the best replacement for Az, Seb?
You know those like wind-up monkeys that just sort of...
No, not replacement, not like for like. We need a replacement for
an upgrade.
Oh, sorry, that was an upgrade. Sorry, Rich.
They need someone who doesn't sleep, because you can message him at any time, even if it's like Sunday night at 1 a.m, and he will reply. It's
true. Wait till he has kids. Sinu, sorry if I haven't said that very well, says, hello, kind regards from Venezuela. Do you think Kane could be a great captain for double game week 23?
But we just had an announcement.
Yeah.
I was going to say, no, unless we're missing something.
Yeah, I don't think he's got a double game week, and I definitely wouldn't be captaining him over
If
Haaland.
Tottenham had a double game week, I would captain Kane.
Would you?
But that's not very bold.
Would you triple captain?
No, because I haven't got triple captain. And this is a mythical game week. We don't even know the fixtures.
I mean,
that's true.
But we were talking earlier about, when would you get Kane? And I mentioned captaincy. If he had a double, especially one that Haaland didn't have, that's a really good reason to get Kane, right? Because that's a great captain shout.
Yeah. And last one, Indy Barge says, how many players as a minimum would you want going into game week 25? Rich?
6.
6. Seb?
6.
What? Have I just horribly miscounted? Because I want to say like 10. I think.
Wait. Sorry, was that a double game week?
No, that's 25 is the blank.
No, 25.
Oh, sorry. Ignore that then. 11.
Yeah, cool.
6.
Okay.
When you said 6, I was like, okay.
No, I was only hard. I was thinking about double game weeks. For the blank, I'd try and maximise and get to 11 without doing hits.
Also, the blank is going to be very, very strange because we're all going to have triple Arsenal. We're going to have like double or triple City, most of us, aren't we? It's more about covering the points than just getting random players, I would say. But that's like every blank, isn't it? So
going to be very similar teams.
I would add to that as well, is I would say take the hit or don't take a hit that week rather than burning a bunch of transfer hits or even a free hit. I think the free hit will be much more valuable later. If you do only get to 10 or something, swallow it. That'll be fine. There's better times to use your chips.
Definitely. Right. Lovely stuff. Community, thank you so much for joining us. Like I said, we had about 800, which is the most we've had for quite a while. So thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you're telling your friends about us as well, because we'd love to have more people watching every week. Seb, I hope you've enjoyed yourself being the host tonight as well.
Thank you. I just remembered I need to stop this. I was like, oh, I better actually get to
Yes.
We'll just be like, okay, bye. And then everyone will just see us walk off and go to bed.
Yeah, that's what we do. And Rich, thank you so much for joining us as well, my friend.
Yeah, it's been fun. Also, I've just remembered we're in the middle of a game week.
Yeah. Wednesday night. Yeah. One of us might break 100k.
Hey,
gonna get my...
Well, the community team already have.
Yeah, mate, come on, keep up.
Yeah, God, that's all right. We'll
and they captained
anyway.
Pope once as well. Come on.
They did. They did.
Don't
think they voted for that. So thank you again for everybody. Hopefully, hang on. The guy from Venezuela says the question about Kane was because although best captain could be Haaland, there are rotation risks, and Kane has a great record against Leicester, and he is very consistent. I still don't think we go for him over the double game week players, but that's just us. Right. Thank you so much. I hope your arrows are green and hope your Man United lads do well in the next fixture. And obviously maybe the Leeds lads. We'll see. Maybe just one little goal for Nonto for Seb. We'll see you all next week. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye-bye.